Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Microsoft Today podcast. January 3rd, 2019, Automation and Microsoft Learning. We're excited to share some great information with you, but first, a word from our sponsors. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a few questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors too, so you can get paid to podcast. Seriously, if you've ever thought about starting a podcast, now's the time to do it. Anchor makes it that easy. I've had an idea for this podcast for years, and I've finally just gotten around to doing it, and I regret not getting started earlier. So don't be that guy. Don't be like me. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Welcome back to the show, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is our second ever episode and our first real episode. Our previous episode was more like a pilot episode, just kind of explaining what was going on. This is our first full content episode, so thank you for tuning in. Really do appreciate the people that have tuned in so far. I do want to say that the podcast is making its way around the internet. We are on 5 different services right now. There should be 6 or 7 more coming within the next couple of days. If you have any issues following or finding the podcast, head to twitter.com/MSFT today, all one word, MSFT today. And we have all the links up there for what's up there now. We do post them straight to YouTube, Facebook, and so they are available outside of podcasting applications at the moment. Hopefully that won't be an issue going forward. You'll be able to find it on your favorite podcast platform in no time. So I want to let you know that you can find us anywhere on the internet at MSFT today. So patreon.com, facebook.com, twitter.com, instagram.com, and anchor.fm is MSFT today. And while our YouTube channel isn't that, you should be able to find us with the YouTube search for MSFT today, and or just head to MSFT today, and our soon-to-be launch page has a link directly to our YouTube. We're also still set to release our website this weekend. It's about 90% done. I should be able to get to that sometime in late Friday, early Saturday. We'll have that launched. And that'll just be a landing page with links to everything you need to know. We will be building that out with information and learning and things that fall in line with the podcast. It's not going to be a news site and a news blog. There will be some news there, but it'll be more pertinent to news that's relevant to what we've discussed on the podcast. I don't want to compete with the great sites like Windows Central. They do a really good job with that, and I don't have the time to keep up with those guys. They write really well, so that's not what we're going to be about. This is going to be more about collaboration and coming together as people, like-minded folks, and just trying to learn from one another and share data and everything. So with all the housekeeping out of the way, I think without further ado, it's time to jump into the episode. And the meat of the episode is going to be around automation and where we're going as a species because of it and what Microsoft is doing in that space. So I'm going to start out, just in case people didn't understand what automation is and machine learning are, we're going to actually discuss what they are, just the basic definitions of it. So literally, I looked up Encyclopedia Britannica, which says the application of machines to tasks once performed by human beings, or increasingly to the tasks that once otherwise be impossible. So what that basically means is automation is creating machines to do the jobs of humans and or creating machines to do the jobs of the impossible. It then goes on to say, although the term mechanization is often used to refer to the simple replacement of the word labor by machines, automation generally implies the integration of machines into a self-governing system. Automation has revolutionized those areas in which it has been introduced, and there's scarcely an aspect of modern life that it has not been affected by it. Basically, that's a long-winded way of saying automation has evolved from the mechanical to neural, right? So thinking. So automation is no longer just the mechanical aspect of, the cotton gin. And it's moved to an area that is not quite sentient, but it is able to make basic logic. So what once started as just the mechanical improvements for humans, things like the cotton gin and the steam engine and those sorts of things, have gone into a more neurological, decision-making, intelligent type process. Hopefully that makes sense. But at the end of the day, automation is take a complex job, make it easier, using tools of some kind, whether it's mechanical or whether it's software or whether it's a combination of the two. And as you probably already know, automation isn't changing the world. It has changed the world. I've already mentioned improvements in the past, like the cotton gin and the steam engine. And the term was actually coined first by a Ford employee, D.S. Harder, in 1946, regarding automation of their processes there. Machine learning is basically just the automation of machines learning. Literally, that's all it is. And so Machine learning is simply accelerating the progress at a compounding rate of what our automation is doing. In short, the machines are teaching themselves to automate faster than humans could ever teach them. And the more computing power we throw at it, the faster this process accelerates. And so if you don't know, and since I know my eloquence isn't perfectly on point, just in case nobody else understands what I'm saying, Britannica states that machine learning is the discipline concerned with the implementation of computer software that can learn autonomously. Expert systems and data mining operations are the most common application for improving algorithms used through the use of machine learning. Among the most common approaches are the use of artificial neural networks, which are weighted decision paths, and genetic algorithms, or symbols bred and culled by algorithms to produce successfully fitter programs. So there are two different types, basically. There's the weighted decision paths, or the neural networks, and then there's the genetic algorithms, which are literally, they're bred and culled by other algorithms. So machine learning can be two-faceted, but they both have the same end goal. I'm really sorry that was a little dense and a little boring and probably a little droning on. I just really wanted to know, before we even got started into the conversation down, that the things that we're about to discuss, that are going to be a little more entertaining and at least a little more engaging, they'll make sense to you. But just think, automation is making harder jobs easier, and machine learning is computers making harder jobs easier by teaching other computers. Hopefully that makes sense. That's probably what I should have started with. But I like sourcing my information, and so I went to Britannica, which Britannica has a way of writing things that's really difficult to say out loud, and so I have no doubt I tripped up over my tongue a few times during that segment, but hopefully they got a little laugh out of that. But so that gets us to the next situation. So automation is not a new concept. Again, the cotton gin, the steam engine, the industrial revolution, computers, and then now as we move into the future, we have quantum computing and nanotechnology, and those sorts of things. It's just going to it just progresses faster and faster and faster, right? It's Moore's Law. We're just going to continue to get faster and faster, and we're continue to progress at a higher and higher rate the more we do. How I eventually got into being a Microsoft fan was the 1994 Playboy interview with Bill Gates. Don't tell my mom that I was reading Playboy in 1994, but I was reading it. I was more interested in what Bill Gates had to say than the ladies. And it's actually a really great interview if you haven't read it. It's a very long interview. I remember finding it on like an about.com page way back in the day, probably 10 or 15 years ago. I'm sure you can still find it. It's still out there. I may try to find it and put it in the notes. But one of the quotes that's attributed to Bill Gates that he probably didn't say is, "I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it." I've tried to find out if Bill Gates actually said that. I'm a huge Bill Gates fan. I've been following for years, and I've never once heard him say that. And that doesn't really seem like something Bill would say, just because he's a little bit more logical than that. But at the base root of that statement, I think it's very true, and I think it's an indicator of our striving forward, right? We want to make our lives easier. We first started having to be farmers, and now we know how to cultivate, and we do all these other things that make our lives easier and evolve as a species. And this is no different now, but now it's with ones and zeros instead of rocks and spears and fire, right? That's kind of where we are today and where we're going to go in the future. And so that brings us to the biggest point of my podcast today, and that's with the CGP Grey film, Humans Need Not Apply. Some of you may have already seen this. It was a very popular YouTube video from 2014 from the amazing CGP Grey YouTube channel. I'm so upset that he's still on hiatus, and he's been on hiatus for over a year now, but he makes fantastic learning videos and takes really complex ideas like what I'm trying to do here and makes them in very, very understandable ways. And so we're going to kind of play some clips from that and kind of discuss that as we go. And then at the end, we'll see how Microsoft plays a role and where we're going from here. So in an effort to be both respectful to CGP Grey and the work that he did with this video, and to stay within fair use, we're going to play some clips, and then I'm going to stop it. I'm going to make a comment or two, then we're going to play a few more clips. We're not going to listen to the whole video because the video is pretty long. There's probably a total of 3 or 4 minutes we're listening to, and then we're just going to kind of work our way through from there. And then once we get through there, again, I'm going to touch base on how Microsoft fits in this whole thing as we move forward. So overall, this video kind of paints a really, really nasty picture of what's to come, but it's kind of like global warming, right? We have ways we can stop it and slow it, limit the damage that it may cause, And that's where technology comes in, and that's why it's so exciting, the things that Microsoft's doing in this space. And this is one of the issues that we need to all rely on and be open and share. This is something that's going to affect the entire world, right? So this shouldn't be like a closed off system. And that's why you see a lot of artificial intelligence initiatives kind of coming together, because they realize the more data they have, the better. And so just keep that in mind, that while this may seem doom and gloom, technology can save the day, as it has many, many times before.
Every human used to have to hunt or gather to survive, but humans are smartly lazy, so we made tools to make our work easier. From sticks to plows to tractors, we've gone from everyone needing to make food to modern agriculture with almost no one needing to make food. And yet, we still have abundance. Of course, it's not just farming, it's everything. We've spent the last several thousand years building tools to reduce physical labor of all kinds. These are mechanical muscles, stronger, more reliable, and more tireless than human muscles ever could be. And that's a good thing. Replacing human labor with mechanical muscles frees people to specialize, and that leaves everyone better off, even those still doing physical labor. This is how economies grow and standards of living rise. Some people have specialized to be programmers and engineers whose job is to build mechanical minds. Just as mechanical muscles made human labor less in demand, so are mechanical minds making human brain labor less in demand. This is an economic revolution. You may think we've been here before, but we haven't. This time is different.
So what Gray is saying here is, like their dumb, quote-unquote, dumb mechanical forefathers, mechanical minds are making, quote-unquote, mechanical brains in less demand. So how humans built robots in the past to build other physical items, they're building. And this next clip, Gray is talking about Baxter, which is a general-purpose robot that can be taught to do things, either manually or visually. So it has like an iPad-looking face, and so it can watch you do a task, and it repeats that task, like turn a widget, or pour a drink, or stack boxes in a certain way, or something along those lines. Very easy and minimal tasks, but it can learn many, many different easy and minimal tasks.
When you think of automation, you probably think of this: giant, custom-built, expensive, efficient, but really dumb robots blind to the world and their own work. They were a scary kind of automation, but they haven't taken over the world because they're only cost-effective in narrow situations. But they're the old kind of automation. This is the new kind. Meet Baxter. Unlike these things, which require skilled operators and technicians and millions of dollars, Baxter has vision and can learn what you want him to do by watching you do it. And he costs less than the average annual salary of a human worker. Unlike his older brothers, he isn't pre-programmed for one specific job. He can do whatever work is within the reach of his arms. Baxter is what might be thought of as a general-purpose robot, and general purpose is a big deal. Think computers. They too started out as highly custom and highly expensive, but when cheap-ish general-purpose computers appeared, they quickly became vital to everything. A general-purpose computer can just as easily calculate change, or assign seats on an airplane, or play a game, or do anything just by swapping its software. And this huge demand for computers of all kinds is what makes them both more powerful and cheaper every year.
General purpose is the key phrase here. The more jobs that a machine can do, the easier sell it is.
We think of technological change as the fancy new expensive stuff, but the real change comes from last decade stuff getting cheaper and faster. That's what's happening to robots now. And because their mechanical minds are capable of decision-making, they are out-competing humans for jobs in a way no pure mechanical muscle ever could.
So the key takeaway here is, as product improvements iterate faster over time, costs drop exponentially, lowering the barrier for entry more and more. Gray then goes on to discuss horses and the fact that their population peaked in 1915. From 1915 on, their population dropped overnight. And we all know that's because of the automobile, right? Horses were the workers of previous centuries, and they became obsolete overnight because of the automobile. Humans can be in that same boat if we don't prepare.
As mechanical muscles pushed horses out of the economy, mechanical minds will do the same to humans. Not immediately, not everywhere, but in large enough numbers and soon enough that it's going to be a huge problem if we're not prepared, and we're not prepared. You, like the second horse, may look at the state of technology now and think it can't possibly replace your job, but technology gets better, cheaper, and faster at a rate biology can't match. Just as the car was the beginning of the end for the horse, so now does the car show us the shape of things to come.
From that, I think most of you can probably predict where Gray's going next.
Traditional cars happen to be human-sized to transport humans, but tiny autos can work in warehouses and gigantic autos can work in pit mines. Moving stuff around is who knows how many jobs, but the transportation industry in the United States employs about 3 million people. Extrapolating worldwide, that's something like 70 million jobs at a minimum. These jobs are over. The usual argument is that the unions will prevent it, but history is filled with workers who fought technology that would replace them, and the workers always lose. Economics always wins, and there are huge incentives across wildly diverse industries to adopt autos. For many transportation companies, humans are about a third their total costs. That's just the straight salaries. Humans sleeping in their long-haul trucks cost time and money, accidents cost money, carelessness costs money. If you think insurance companies will be against it, guess what? Their perfect driver is one who pays their small premiums and never gets into an accident. The autos are coming, and they're the first place where most people will really see the robots changing society. But there are many other places in the economy where the same thing is happening, just less visibly. So it goes with autos, so it goes for everything.
Basically, the tipping point for the transportation world is going to come down to financing. It's going to come down to insurance costs. The moment it is cheaper for a large trucking company to have autonomous trucks on the roads than actual drivers, 1 or 2% can make a huge difference to their bottom lines for their insurance costs. So it's going to happen. We're going to have autonomous vehicles. We see the Tesla 18-wheeler, a Tesla semi-truck that's in development that is getting ordered by companies like Walmart and UPS by the hundreds. They know that they can ship 24/7, 365 with automated trucks, but a driver has to stop by law every 10 hours, I believe what it is, or something along those lines, or 10 hours or 800 miles or something like that and sleep. They don't need to do that with autonomous trucking. And so the transportation industry is what's going to be hit first and hardest, and is the automation point that we're all going to see first as well.
It's easy to look at autos and Baxters and think technology has always gotten rid of low-skilled jobs we don't want people doing anyway. They'll get more skilled and do better educated jobs like they've always done. Even ignoring the problem of pushing 100 million additional people through higher education, white-collar work is no safe haven either. If your job is sitting in front of a screen and typing and clicking, like maybe you're supposed to be doing right now, the bots are coming for you too, buddy. Software bots are both intangible and way faster and cheaper than physical robots. Given that white-collar workers are, from a company's perspective, both more expensive and more numerous, the incentive to automate their work is greater than low-skilled work. And that's just what automation engineers are for. These are skilled programmers whose entire job is to replace your job with a software bot. You may think even the world's smartest automation engineer could never make a bot to do your job, and you may be right, but the cutting edge of programming isn't super smart programmers writing bots, it's super smart programmers writing bots that teach themselves how to do things the programmer could never teach them to do. How that works is well beyond the scope of this video, but the bottom line is there are limited ways to show a bot a bunch of stuff to do, show the bot a bunch of correctly done stuff, and it can figure out how to do the job to be done. Even with just a goal and no knowledge of how to do it, the bots can still learn. Take the stock market, which in many ways is no longer a human endeavor. It's mostly bots that taught themselves to trade stocks, trading stocks with other bots that taught themselves. As a result, the floor of the New York Stock Exchange isn't filled with traders doing their day jobs anymore. It's largely a TV set. So bots have learned the market, and bots have learned to write. If you've picked up a newspaper lately, you've probably already read a story written by a bot. There are companies that teach bots to write anything, sports stories, TPS reports, even say those quarterly reports that you write at work. Paperwork, decision-making, writing, a lot of human work falls into that category, and the demand for human mental labor in these areas is on the way down. But surely the professions are still safe from bots, yes?
So that's the end of our clips from the Gray video. I highly recommend you all go watch that. I will be linking it in the description of this podcast, and also whenever we talk about it on Twitter, and I'll be linking it. It's a fantastic video. Obviously, that's why I wanted to use it for this. But we just wanted to focus on the key parts about what automation is and how it's coming and how we can't really stop it. The video goes on basically to talk about how it's affecting every part of society, not just the manual labor, not just the entry-level jobs, but machine learning is also going to take away basic medial office type jobs and then also professional jobs. There's neural networks that are already doing things for lawyers and already doing things for like drawing up legal papers for lawyers. They're searching for cures for cancer. They're writing music, they're painting pictures, they're literally just changing the world as we know it, and no industry is going to get away unscathed. One area where I have personal experience in this is investment banking. I've worked for an algorithmic trading firm before, and I've also worked in investment banking. And at those places, they're already utilizing algorithms to change the world, and literally they're making billions and billions of dollars using algorithms and manipulating the market. I shouldn't say that because I'll get some hate from, algo traders, which I've done it in the past myself. If you guys want to look it up, there's QuantConnect, quantconnect.com. It's a C# based open source initiative for it. There's also some Python ones and things like that. But basically they use algorithms and then they take the market data that they have. It's called tick data. So tick data is captured. Every stock movement is captured. And there's data for it. And there's firms that capture all of that data in these huge data warehouses. And then so they program their models and then they run their models against that data to know whenever the market indicators are in the same place as it is now, how they can kind of predict what their profit margins may be and whenever they make that trade. And that's the basic structure of how algo trading works. I'm very, very, very simplifying it. There's hardware involved and there's millisecond response times and all these other things, but just know it's a very competitive market, and it's something that's being used and being manipulated every day, and it's been going on for decades, since the late 90s as the first algo trader. So if it's already manipulating the financial market, just to figure out where it's going to happen before. And again, I don't use manipulation in a negative connotation there, but it's affecting it. And AI and machine learning is just making those traders more effective in the end as well. Ian J. Goodfellow in 2014 released his scientific paper for GANs, or generative adversarial networks for AI, and that's just 4 years ago. And now companies like NVIDIA are already using that to create realistic 3D models and 3D creations of fake people. So they're not people, they don't have any reference, not using any reference images or anything like that, and they're coming back and creating these 3D images of people from nothing. It's fascinating. And the fact that this GAN network was only first introduced in 2014 and they're already doing these amazing computational crazy things with it is just mind-blowing at times. But fret not, because the technology has and will continue to be the great equalizer, right? But you have to prepare yourself, and that's basically the whole point of this podcast. What is Microsoft doing in this space, and how can you better prepare yourself to take advantage of the things they're doing in that space? And so that's the whole point of this podcast. All that long, detailed background has all led up to this. What's Microsoft doing in these spaces? What services are they utilizing it in? And what is their vision for the future with artificial intelligence and machine learning? And that's an easy answer. Everything. Microsoft is injecting AI into every single facet of the company that they can. Period. End of story. Microsoft has come out and said that they want AI helping and improving all of their products, and they're showing that. And we're going to go over that right now. So over the next couple minutes, we're going to talk about all the initiatives Microsoft has in these spaces, but we're not going to dive too deep into those because that's what subsequent podcasts are going to be about. So just think about that. We're not going to dive. I'm not a computational scientist or an AI expert or anything like that, but I am going down the machine learning data science track as I transition in my career. So I'm going to focus on that probably in upcoming podcasts, and then the things I'm doing in my day-to-day life with like Power Apps and Flow. So just keep that in mind that while this is kind of a gloss, I'm not glossing over these things. We're going to come back. They're very complex subjects and very complex and like ideas that just have this huge footprint. And I would be doing a disservice to the people who work at Microsoft on these amazing initiatives by just doing a bad job of trying to explain them in such a short time frame. So it's going to take some research to discuss those at a more intelligent level, which is what I hope to do. My overall goal is actually to get people on from Microsoft for most of these issues where they can share what they're doing directly to you, so you can take the word from them, the experts, rather than me passing on information to them from them. But we'll see how that goes. So at the highest levels is Microsoft Research. Microsoft Research is a huge part of the company that develops technologies. They start working on things and kind of see where it goes. It's not quite a garage theory. They are scientists, they are technical fellows, they are brilliant people just trying to make great things happen. But, think like products like HoloLens that came out of Microsoft Research first. They look at things from a non-consumer perspective. They're literally just trying to push the envelope of technology and hoping that they find consumer and business usages for those technologies down the line. And most of the time, Microsoft Research has been able to do that because they just have some brilliant minds there. So under Microsoft Research, they had this project Brainwave, which basically revolutionized the hardware working on their Azure servers. And just know that it's basically Intel FPGA, so they're using graphics processing within these boxes, which is something that's also used in most highly computational systems like high-frequency trading companies. So you'll see hardware engineer jobs at banks. That's what they're for. And so Brainwave basically works with an Intel FPGA. And so Microsoft recently, I think it was like February of last year, came out and said, we have the best systems for this project Brainwave than our competitors. But that's what's powering all of these systems and services we're about to talk about, right? It all goes through Azure. And Satya Nadella, the CEO, was the brainchild of Azure, and that's why he's been the perfect CEO, and he's helped grow this company into what it is. Do you guys remember whenever Azure was actually Windows Azure? I do, because that's whenever it was only going to run basically Windows-based systems. Then they said, ta-da, we can run anything on here, and we can be OS agnostic, and we can embrace open source. And that's the Microsoft you have today, and that's why you see them back at the top of the wealth charts for the companies. But that's another discussion, and I could go down a rabbit hole talking about forever about how much I love Satya and his vision for the company. Basically, everything's built off of the hardware that Microsoft Research helped develop for Azure, and then that includes Microsoft AI. And Microsoft AI's deep neural network also contains the Bing decision engine, which is also the brain behind Cortana. So that kind of gets us into a conversation. I'm sure you guys have heard that Microsoft's allowing Alexa on Xbox and on Windows and things like that, and people are like, this is the death of Cortana. And it's like, no, it's not. Again, you're looking at it from a consumer perspective. Step outside and look what Microsoft's doing. Microsoft bringing Alexa in, Amazon and Alexa in for their AI initiative is one of the most brilliant ideas they've done. And I just rest on that for a few minutes and we'll come back to that. So on top of Microsoft and AI and Azure is Azure Machine Learning, which is a framework and systems for machine learning. So other people can utilize their hardware, their software, their tool sets that they've developed, their frameworks that they've developed for machine learning. And so not only is Microsoft pushing the envelope, but they're enabling other people to do it. I'm sure we've all seen the Microsoft commercials with the rapper actor, won't put him in a box, but like his thing is they're empowering the world, right? And Microsoft truly does. They empower, and that's the whole point. That's Satya's vision for the company, and that's Microsoft's unified vision now is empowering, provide the tool sets to everyone and let everyone else make the magic, right? And so that's what Microsoft's doing, including with AI and machine learning. And then so on top of Azure Machine Learning, there also sits Azure Logic Apps. Azure Logic Apps are kind of this hybrid system between Office 365 and Azure, but all that, again, goes back to resting on top of Azure. At the end of the day, it's all Azure. It's Azure, 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 Azure. And so Azure Logic Apps are basic. They take the automation down to the granular level, like literally business processes. When someone submits a vacation request, forward it to this person and forward to this person and send an email. And basically, that's what those Logic Apps can do. They can do some amazing things when you add scripting with Python and JSON and all these other amazing things. And I'm going to get into that because that's the stuff I do every day now, and I love it, and I can't get enough of it. So we're going to talk about that more in the future. But so just know that Azure Logic Apps, which include Microsoft Flow and Power Apps, are all, and then SharePoint integration with that as well, also work off the window definition language. Again, this is all built on Azure. This is all built on machine learning and the data centers and those sorts of things. But on top of that as well, they have built in Microsoft Bot Framework. And the Bot Framework is a way for people to automate communications and updates and those sorts of things that, again, works with all of these services. That's the beauty of all of these services. They're all plugged in to each other. They all have common APIs that are easily accessible. They all work with third-party systems and open source, and they're not tied and handcuffed in any way, shape, or form, which 20 years ago, we would have never thought that about Microsoft, right? But this isn't Ballmer's Microsoft. And Zoe AI is a social. So if you go on, I think it's Zoe Chats on Twitter, twitter.com/Zoe Chats, you can start up a conversation with their AI bot that they're helping to build out this framework with. And so with on top of the bot framework, we also have Office 365, which includes things like Microsoft Teams, and then their data connectors and APIs with countless third-party systems, which, again, you can tie all the way back up to chain back all the way up to Azure and machine learning and those sorts of things if you so choose. And then add on top of that, we have things like Windows 10 IoT, Internet of Things. Microsoft's invested billions. I think like earlier this year, they invested $5 billion more into Internet of Things. And so literally they're going to have AI in every single thing in your home, from your washer or dryer, your dishwasher, your refrigerator. Like it's coming. It's coming. So AI is going to be ingrained into every part of their life, and that's where all of those things come. And so that's kind of like the whole picture of AI. That's not even getting into like the consumer side or anything they're doing in that realm, and Xbox and those sorts of things. This is literally just the foundation, the framework for everything. And then they're building services on top of that, and then they're also enabling other people to build services on top of that as well. Microsoft is giving us the tools to do what we need to do to adapt and to adapt for this new world where automation is going to be key. And you too can learn these automation things, because I am, and I have, and I'm working my way through that. We're going to discuss this in coming podcasts. I'm making the transition from a standard systems administrator, a hands-on administrator, systems architect, that sort of thing, into these worlds, because that's the exciting part. That's the things. That's the future. Automation is the future. Power Apps and logic flows and the workflow definition language and the Microsoft Bot framework. That is the future. Like the day-to-day operations of systems administration, they're going to go away. Maybe not in 5 years, maybe not in 10 years, maybe not in 20 years, because we all know that companies are slow to adapt when it comes to technology. How many people are out there that are system administrators that are supporting Windows 2003 servers still, or 2008, or Windows XP machines? I know we're out there. I know there's people still in Force Functional Level 2003, so it's just one of those things that when the businesses are slow to adapt, but if you get ahead of the curve, you can separate yourself. And Microsoft's even giving you free training to do that, and we're going to discuss that in the future. So. But let's get back to that Cortana. So Cortana...
I can't help with that right now.
I promise I didn't plan that. That was my Invoke speaker in my living room that heard me talking about it here on the podcast as I'm recording. So I'm not going to say her name anymore, but you know who I'm talking about. She was just the face of the AI that was behind it, and she still is. So the fact that Microsoft has introduced Alexa into this Rubicon isn't a big deal. Actually, it's improving the AI as it is, because it's more data coming in. With AI, all that matters, well, not all that matters, but the most important thing with AI and machine learning is the data set. It can more accurately create and learn and do the things it needs to do whenever it has a larger data set with a larger and more varied data set. That is a complete generalization, obviously, from a hierarchy standpoint, from the very top level, from machine learning. The more data you have, the better. That's why all these companies are just gathering up all the data they can. Of course, in data science, there's more intricacies and things like that whenever you get down to, more data isn't better depending if you're trying to get granular data and things like that. But for the grand scheme of things, the more data you have, the better. And what better way to get data than to plug yourself into the largest virtual assistant in the world with the largest retailer in the world? The people who think that this was a dumb move by Microsoft just don't understand it. They don't understand that machine learning is all about the data, and they got the keys to the kingdom with the data from Amazon. They know they can't compete with selling speakers with Amazon, because Amazon's the largest retailer in the world. Microsoft has nothing to do with retail other than their stores. And they only have stores. I live in Houston. There's only 3 stores in Houston. And it's a city of 6 million people. So they know that they can't compete at that. A company selling them directly to their consumers at a loss, because they want that connection point in the home. Like Amazon does not make money on the Echoes. They make money on the people using the Echoes that buy more stuff from Amazon. Microsoft can't compete with that, doesn't want to compete with that. That's not their world, but they do want that data. And so bringing Amazon and Alexa into the Microsoft realm was a brilliant idea. They get that data. They're getting that data without any business risk. You understand? Like, for them to try to compete, and the Windows Phone was the same thing. They couldn't compete in the Windows Phone space. I love Windows Phone. I miss it to this day. I hate my Android. I've tried to use it, and I have a Pixel, and it's nothing compared to my Windows Phone. I love my Windows Phone, but I completely understand why they got out of the space right now. I think they're going to re-enter into the space, and we'll get back on that, but it's going to come down to batteries and hardware. Once they can get a x86 and once classic PC apps on a phone with a good battery, Windows Phone's going to be back, because Continuum is an amazing service. But again, I got sidetracked there. But just have to think about that Microsoft, when it comes to AI, they want the more data they can get. And what better way to get that data than to plug in directly with Amazon Alexa? It's brilliant. It really is brilliant to me. And so just know, I could go down this rabbit hole all day. I think I've probably inundated you guys with a ton of information today. And this became a lot more complex and a lot more dry than I wanted it to be, because I like having the conversation back and forth. But I think this has been a very important subject to me my entire, like the last 6 or 7 years, automation, just because seeing my job change because of scripting and the PowerShell and, Windows Core and those sorts of things, Docker and all these other technologies that are taking away the classic server model, right? Because even in the early days of the cloud, you literally just took your physical servers you had here on site and you put them in the cloud. That's not like that anymore. Everything's a service now. And I think a lot of people are going to be slow to adapt, and automation is going to be there. But the key is Microsoft is giving us the tool sets and they're giving us the training. And I'll give them the training in future episodes. And I want to get people from Microsoft and I want to get experts in to talk about these things, because they're going to be more passionate about certain subject than I am. Like me right now, my most passionate thing, I will talk all day about SharePoint, Power Apps, and Microsoft Flow, because that's what I'm doing every day for my business. Or I'll talk all day about Power BI and data collection sets and those sorts of things. But there's some really cool stuff that I think we should share and that we can have cool things. And I think the important thing is knowing these things help you understand where Microsoft is going as a company, who they are as a company, and where you can look for in the next 10 or 15 years. All the people who thought that Apple was going to be at the top of the food chain for a long time are very short-sighted. They were looking all Apple as. Apple's a one-trick pony at this point. They're iOS. iOS isn't amazing. Their hardware is amazing, but iOS is not amazing. There's no real difference between iOS and Android, right? The operating systems. There's no real. They both do basically the same thing. A Google Pixel and an iPhone side by side do pretty much the same thing. There's no differentiator there. Microsoft differentiates on countless things all over the enterprise. And that's where they really separate themselves. And it's becoming all about data. That's the same reason they haven't left the gaming space, right? The gaming space was a great way to get set tops into people's homes. That's a way to collect data. That's why Cortana was included with the original Xbox One. That's why she was put into the start menu of Windows 10. That's why they're all about the data. The more data they know, the better they can serve you. The better they can give you information you need to empower you, as Common says in the ads, to do what you need to do. We can have conversations about privacy and things like that, and whether you agree with that and those sorts of things. That's a whole different conversation. But if you understand what they're doing as a company, hopefully you realize that they seem to have the best interests at heart. To me personally, everything I see from them, everything from whenever the Edward Snowden leaks came out to everything I see now, they're at the forefront of doing the right thing compared to other companies that used to say do no evil and think different, that don't do anything of that sort. So that's where I'm going to leave it today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sorry this was kind of a dense. It's not going to be like this. I do have an interview scheduled for next week. I'm not going to promise it's going to happen because things can come up, so I'm not going to put that person's name out there just in case it doesn't happen and people are like, hey, what's going on? But we're going to get a Microsoft MVP in here for an interview, hopefully. I've reached out to the Microsoft Flow team and trying to get an interview with some folks from there. So a lot of exciting things to come. The next episode is going to be on next Tuesday, which is the 8th. Tuesday 8th is the next episode. And so tune in. And then now I'm going to leave you with this. Finally, Microsoft fans, I'm here to call you to action. For too long, we've been inundated and attacked with misinformed, misguided, and ignorant news and coverage about Microsoft. Well, to that, I say no more. With your help, we can defeat the ignorant and lift up the technologically oppressed by spreading the word about Microsoft, their products, and their people the right way. So I challenge you today to stand up for the technologically oppressed and help spread the word about Microsoft today. Subscribe to this podcast and share it with your family, friends, and colleagues. Write a 5-star review on iTunes, support it on Patreon, and follow Microsoft Today on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I can't do this alone, but with your help and God willing, we can come together to defeat the tyranny of misinformation. Until next time, Microsoft fans, good luck on the battlefield in your fight against ignorance, and Godspeed.